Alright guys, this is Breaker, and I am back with another replay that I took from the front page of Drop.sc. And this one caught my attention particularly because of our Terran player spawning in the upper left-hand corner, known as AcerMMA. And in the lower right-hand corner, his barcode opponent that I have no clue who he is. He's just going to be a barcode Protoss. Now, I do want to just go ahead and set the stage that this could be extremely early mind games, if you will. Because, of course, if we don't know who a barcode really is, then he could have just been typing out in English just now to, I guess, throw MMA off just a little bit. He could very well be Korean, but then again, he could very well be European or North American, but, you know, it's just difficult to assess from the start. Talking about the map for just a little bit, it does have a lot of potential, a lot of wide open spaces to send drops out for both sides. But for the time being, I think it's time to go into mini blog mode, since we're going to have typically about 3 minutes or so of fill-in time before any action really begins, or before we really see the game begin to come together and get an idea of what both players are going to do. So it's been, I'm thinking now, almost 2 weeks since I've arrived in Korea. And so far I'm liking it. It's pretty okay. There's a few, having been to China, Taiwan, I've been to Japan, but only for a 2-hour transfer flight, so I can't really tell you guys what it's like in Japan. But being in China, Taiwan, and Korea, what I can tell you is a definitive difference that just comes to mind immediately is the tobacco culture, the drinking culture. Smoking culture is almost like China, except a lot of people won't do it indoors. This is actually a pretty brave opener from MMA. He's just going to go with double command center. And I'm thinking at this stage in the game it would be more than appropriate for our barcode player to go ahead and just straight up throw down a Nexus. I mean, he hasn't taken a second gas just yet. Throws down a cybernetic score and the second gas, speaking of, but, you know. Smoking culture, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like China. Except people don't do it indoors. That's, that's the final straw. It's like, no smoking in here. Unless maybe it's a bar we're talking about. But, there can be no smoking signs, and people will be smoking right next to them. Double racks coming from MMA. Perfectly understandable, perfectly respectable play. But at the same time, I really fear for our Protoss player, because he's actually going at this blind. And the longer he goes without knowing this, the longer he goes without starting his own expo, the harder it's going to be for him to continue in this game. Drinking seems very common, I say, almost similar to China, but a bit more expensive than drinking in China. Got all my classes selected, so this should be my last semester of university. But MMA, of course, he's got a triple crown, and I'm wondering just how the course of this game is going to flow. As CV doesn't go down to block the natural, and now MMA sees that he has a clear lead, because he's going to have the ability to crank out double mules whenever he's throwing down a third barracks, just in case he has to hold off against it. And he's using his first Marine for a defensive scout, making sure there's no proxies going down, because, of course, I think, he's very right to actually do this kind of scouting maneuver. Because when he first arrived at his opponent's base, he saw that there was really no natural, there was, a cybernetic score had just finished up, and there was nothing inside the main. So he's just going around making sure there's no proxy play going down. And here's no exception either, except, I think there's kind of a small window where he didn't scout, but, doesn't really matter. Building next to Supply Depot cancels it for some strange reason. Maybe he just realized he was building two at the same time and he just changed his mind. Sounds like a genuine mistake to me. But presently he's actually supply blocked. Okay. So, MMA now sees that there's an expo, but he doesn't see anything inside the main, so it's going to be pretty blind in that regards in the near future. But the thing is, even if we do see, just an immediate crank out of a ton of units, it's not quite going to be that effective coming from our barcode player, because to really deal adequately with what MMA is doing, that is to say bio, he has to get some AoE out, because that's really the only way you can deal with high numbers of Marines, high numbers of Marauders effectively. MMA is going to go ahead and throw down its engineering bay, and our Protoss shipping away the rocks. getting 3 gateways out. Not trying to do any forward pressure with this. He's just getting these out, I think, in case he needs to build an army. But, you know, just from an observer's perspective, I don't play Protoss, but it sounds like a good idea to go ahead and build army and make probes at the same time. And with the present number of gateways that we see coming from our barcode, that's actually, what's the word I'm looking for? That's quite the adequate number of gateways, because I know that versus Zerg, they can use as many as 4 gates, just doing nothing but cranking out zealots, and they virtually get choked on no probes whatsoever. Now, the big thing that's going down here is MMA is getting ready to move up that ramp, and of course the observer saw it moving, saw those Marines moving up, and that was almost the world's luckiest Marine. Almost the world's luckiest Marine. So, I mean, basically, our barcode was ready for it, but MMA shot down that observer as soon as it got to its front door, and this is all the vision that our Protoss has. So he's in the gutter right now, but I kind of like this move from him at this stage of the game. Robotics, trying to get the Colossi out a little bit faster, because of course he just doesn't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? I really feel that High Templar at this stage of the game is kind of a gamble, especially given the fact, like, on 2 base, we could see, you know, AcerMMA go for a Ghost Academy on 2 base, and that really makes me cringe just a little bit, because of course those High Templar are most effective during the late game, and of course if you get them out in the early game and you force your opponent to go Ghost Academy in the mid game, which is early-ish mid game, then then I really feel that the potential of High Templar later on in the game would be almost entirely negated. Liking this Overseer right here, not bad placement whatsoever. And picking away at the rocks, he's going to go ahead and take that 3rd. For those of you who remember that old map, I'm trying to think of its English name. Entombed Valley. Entombed Valley. This one reminds me of that one just a teeny bit, because you have to break away your rocks to effectively get to that 3rd as a Terran or a Protoss player. But it looks like we're going to have MMA. You know, he's not taking a 3rd just yet. This could be... Let's check what he's got so far. Upgrades and everything else in between. Just Stim. And I think he's moving out for a +1 combat shields timing, perhaps? No. Well, he's just moving out with numbers, and that's it. But the rocks have been thrown down, and that means the Marines won't be able to get in anytime soon. There's not a lot of Vikings in this composition, so we have to see AcerMMA Stim very carefully and make it effective. There's 2 Colossi in the mix, though, and that's just going to throw MMA back. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to try that again. But 2 medevacs did just load up. They're not full of energy. 2 more gateways that have not been turned into warp gates just yet. Extended thermal lance is finishing up. And charge on the way, just as we see the double medevacs getting ready to drop at the lower leftish position. I think it could be forced to cancel. Oh, man. Is there any saving that? Is there any saving? Oh, that was canceled. But not quite at the last second. Not quite at the last second. Still, that's quite the dirty cake for any Protoss to eat, really. But, I guess he won't be too terribly far behind. Oh, and that's a nice kickoff right there. He got so many with that. And look at the amount of resources lost that we actually have from our Protoss. He's exchanging very effectively. But MMA is looking like he's trying to crank down those rocks, and I think our barcode player is aware of it. But beyond that, you know, MMA, if he manages to take this down yet again, get his 3rd up behind it, he's just going to be so much stronger. He's just going to have such a much stronger lead, in fact. But behind that, +2/+2 and concussive shells now coming down. No timings here, just a lot of forward pressure, and those Marines get vaporized as they run away. It says, do you map hack? I'm not sure if that was legitimate or not. He says, no. Okay. I mean, like, here he kind of had some legitimate vision, which was the rocks. Like, he was just paying attention to those. Maybe he heard the C-14 Gauss rifles actually pecking away at them. But something about something about this game just doesn't quite say this is the legit MMA to me. 4 Vikings in the mix. 3 Colossi. Very little in the way of army, forward army at least right now. But there's going to be a few stalkers here, and the observer caught everything moving out, so I'm pretty sure that our barcode knows what's going on here. +3, Storm isn't ready yet. That's actually pretty big right now. You never want to have AoE and never have it ready to go against your opponent. But if it's one thing that can do a lot of damage to this army right now in its present stage, it would be amputating storms. Very amputating storms. A few SCVs were pulled along for the right here. That's okay, I guess. Maybe they're meant to repair the Vikings from the ground. But we also have the third being established for AcerMMA. +3 now on the way, just as +2 is finishing up for our Terran. And this is, I mean, as long as we have some Chrono boosts ready to go, and our barcode is actually on top of it in that aspect, then he's going to have the ability to really get those upgrades out really, really fast. The +3 armor will really help, but is it going to make it through that stage? So many SCVs have just been pulled, and let's see how this goes. Oh, man. Okay, well, force fields, where are they? We're going to need them. Storms are beautiful. No dodges here from MMA. And it's just like this entire army is evaporating. And now I see that this is not the legitimate MMA. Yeah. I don't think a Triple Crown winner would actually lose to something like this. But yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and talk to you guys later. I'll catch you guys later when I've got more news on my situation here.